You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hello, and thanks for joining Revolution 250, where we look at events that took place 250 years ago this week. This is from the American Revolution Podcast, just a short bonus episode to remind you about these important anniversaries from the Revolutionary War. This week, we remember the American invasion of Canada, which began in the first week of September, 1775. In late August 1775, the Patriots received word that the British were constructing ships at St. John's in Quebec, which would be used to sail down Lake Champlain and retake Fort Ticonderoga. Major General Philip Schuyler was in command of the Northern Army. Schuyler had been appointed one of the first major generals in the Continental Army. He had fought as a captain in the French and Indian War and had served as a militia colonel before the Revolution. His appointment was primarily based on his political and social standing in the state and the fact that Congress wanted a general from New York. Brigadier General Richard Montgomery was second in command. He had served in the British Regular Army for many years, rising to the rank of captain. He'd also fought in the French and Indian War, as well as the Caribbean during the broader 7 Years' War. He'd also served as a British officer in Pontiac's war against the Indians. Montgomery had sold his British commission several years before the Revolutionary War began, not for ideological reasons, but because he had been passed over for promotion. He had settled in New York, and he offered his services to the Continental Army. When the report about the British at St. John's reached the Americans at Ticonderoga, Schuyler was away negotiating with the local Indian tribes to ensure their neutrality in this conflict. In his absence, Richard Montgomery collected a force of about 1,200 soldiers and sailed them up to the northern end of the lake to confront the British at St. John's. Schuyler eventually made it back and caught up with the army en route. On September 5th, the Americans skirmished just outside Fort St. John's, mostly with the Indian allies of the British. When the fort gave the Indians little support during that skirmish, many of the Indians just decided to leave. Others left when an Oneida party showed up to convince the other Iroquois that they should remain neutral in this conflict. After receiving another nearly 1,000 reinforcements, including the Green Mountain Boys, General Schuyler led another advance to St. John's in a night attack on September 10th. This failed when inexperienced soldiers from different columns took each other for the enemy and began firing at each other. Following this skirmish, General Schuyler, who had been sick for quite some time, returned to Ticonderoga. General Montgomery continued in command of the forces. Montgomery began a siege of the British fort, cutting off all communications with the larger British garrison at Montreal. This siege would last until November, when the British garrison finally surrendered the fort. At the same time Montgomery was moving into Canada from New York, another Continental force was attacking from a different direction. Colonel Benedict Arnold had been a part of capturing Fort Ticonderoga. After the fights over leadership, Arnold left. He had started out as a Connecticut militia officer, but he had received a colonel's commission in the state of Massachusetts when he was attacking Fort Ticonderoga. After resigning his Massachusetts commission and returning home to Connecticut, Arnold once again traveled to Massachusetts to get another colonel's commission, this time from the Continental Army. Arnold proposed to lead an army through the wilderness of what is today the state of Maine, with the intention of attacking Quebec City from the north, while Schuyler and Montgomery worked their way up from the south. Both General Washington and General Schuyler approved Arnold's mission. On September 6th, as Montgomery was attacking St. John's, Arnold took a force of about 1,000 Continental soldiers from Massachusetts, headed north for the mouth of the Kennebec River. There, Arnold had made arrangements to have 200 shallow draft boats built to carry his army into the wilderness. Bad maps and difficult conditions caused half of Arnold's force to turn back. The other half made it to Quebec, but they were starving in rags by the time they arrived in November. Even so, Arnold arrived at Quebec City before Montgomery and began his siege of the city. I hope you've enjoyed this Revolution 250 moment. For more details on this story, check out episodes 72 and 76 of the American Revolution podcast. I also encourage you to subscribe for free on whatever podcast platform you like. Thanks again for listening to this Revolution 250 moment from the American Revolution Podcast.